The Florida Panthers survive a trap game against the Chicago Blackhawks, avoid being swept, and use a third period comeback despite having the lead. It gets to overtime, and then the Florida Panthers come out with a win, get the 2 points, and remain in the Eastern Conference wildcard race. On today's edition of the show, we're going to discuss the win, the comeback, and if we feel good about the win. We're going to discuss this next on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Saturday, March 11th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. Don't forget to also subscribe to the YouTube channel and send in your screenshot of that and your 5-star rating on whichever podcast app you listen to Locked On Panthers, and send it over to me at LO_FLA Panthers on Twitter, or email it to me at LockedOnFLAPanthers@gmail.com for your chance to win free tickets to an upcoming Panthers game. Best of luck, everybody. So the Cats, best way we could say is that they survived, especially with lots of possession early, but the Panthers were just having troubles with puck retrieval, missing net, gave up 2 rushes that resulted in goals, but the Florida Panthers come out with a comeback win despite having the lead and blowing it, gets to overtime, and the Florida Panthers come out with an overtime winner in FLA Live Arena on a Friday night, where it was the front end of a back-to-back, and the Panthers knew, they spoke about it all week, how this isn't a team that the Panthers could take lightly, especially about how they manhandled the Ottawa Senators and kept it close against the Detroit Red Wings on Wednesday night. But this is a great time to bring in my guest on the show, and more importantly, because this person experienced the game in person tonight, even though it is a later time slot as far as a Friday night and this is a Saturday release, technically it is still a Fairbanks Friday. So Nick Fairbanks is back on the show to talk about this 4-3 win for the Florida Panthers over the Chicago Blackhawks. Nick, welcome back to the show. And how is the atmosphere like tonight at FLA Live Arena? Oh, wait, hold on. You're on mute. Hold on. There you go.
Let me clear my throat a little bit just because of all the yelling that I did during that third period. The crowd was spectacular. They definitely had the energy tonight, whether the Panthers were playing well during parts of the game or when we were trying to cheer them on to make a comeback. They definitely came more alive in the third period, and I think the Panthers really fed off of it. But thank you again for having me back and putting me on the post-game show.
Absolutely, man. And it's crazy. The Panthers, now they have their second 3-game winning streak of the season. Crazy to think that with all the ups and downs of the season. It's funny because the last time they were on a 3-game winning streak, that you came on the show last time around. It was about a month to the day that it happened. And, the Panthers have, and credit to the Panthers. I mean, Steve Goldstein brought it up at the beginning of the game that they're 9-1 after a regulation loss in 2023 in the calendar year. And of course, with the situation of, we've been talking about over the last week about how this Panthers team has been the healthiest that they've been. Unfortunately, Anthony Duclair missed tonight's game due to an illness. Paul Maurice spoke about how he was hopeful to play for tomorrow's game against the Winnipeg Jets. Casey Fitzgerald has to play forward lines as a defenseman, but he has played forward in his junior career. So not something that he's not used to and all that stuff. But it's crazy to think that Panthers dominated the possession most of the game, but it's just little itty bitty mistakes. I mean, the first goal, it was Brandon Montour going up on the play, trying to pinch, and then it leads to the rush that has Caleb Jones scoring. And then the second one, it's another rush where Gus Forsling was a little bit too much to his right, and then that allows Boris Tkachuk. Of course, we know him from his days with the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Brandon Hagel trade there too, and just silly itty bitty mistakes that made this game a lot more stressful than it had to be.
Definitely, and it was more or less what I like to call mental errors. You know, as you said, Brandon Montour decided to pinch at the wrong time, which caused the 2-on-1. And nothing but Bobrovsky could do on that shot by Caleb Jones. That was just a perfect shot in the upper right corner. Nothing he could really do about that. And then you have the Tkachuk goal that, listen, you know, that could have gone either way. I mean, he could have gotten a stick on it, could have gotten right into Bob's chest, or it ended up the way it did. It just went right through his arm and went into the goal. So, I mean, both goals I wouldn't put on Bob. Just the team was not really playing, you know, the way that they should. I think they were taking chances when they shouldn't. And, you know, when we talk about the second period and everything, that's when you really start to see Florida really start to, you know, activate the demon and everything. But Chicago outplayed them for the first 30 minutes. Let's be honest. It was physical. It was a physical game for them. They were winning puck battles, and Florida just didn't seem that they were interested in playing that type of game. So, you know, as you said in the opening, that, you know, they shouldn't be taking this team lightly. They took them lightly for the first 30 minutes, and they paid for it.
Yeah, and definitely one that you can't, and the Panthers escaped. I mean, you think about offensive zone time for the Panthers, even after two periods, it was around 15 minutes to 8 minutes offensive zone time for the Florida Panthers, and puck retrieval was just not there for the Panthers neither. I mean, you didn't see too many red jerseys crowding around Peter Mrazek tonight, and not to mention that they didn't. Of course, Mrazek they didn't even have a backup goalie there. They had an e-bug there, a local kid from Coral Springs who was there as well. And of course, the Panthers going to the box a little too much in this one. Of course, second straight game with a too many men penalty as well. The Bennett interference, wasn't a fan of that one, but too many times that the Florida Panthers just shoot themselves in the foot. And then there was a 5-on-3 as well, which the Florida Panthers were able to kill off. I mean, one shot on goal on the PK on that 5-on-3. I mean, I'm willing to say that it's more bad Blackhawks as far as good Panthers on that PK as far as that. But passing lanes were closed, not connecting on the tape, and the Panthers were winning the board battles on that PK. But as far as the 5-on-5 numbers, I mean, I said it yesterday, the Panthers are plus 22 heading into Friday night's game at 5-on-5 on the season, but it wasn't showing as far as what they were doing as far as the 5-on-5 play with those board battles and all that stuff.
No, and you know, that's basically how Chicago was able to get the 2-0 lead after the first period, is that they really worked for their goals. I mean, yeah, they were on the rush and everything like that, but you know, had Florida not been, you know, trying to push the play so much and not play smart, you know, play simple like the Hawks were, maybe they wouldn't have found them in the position that they were in. But Florida just always, this season, they are the most penalized team. You would think that they would be wise to that and try to, you know, fix whatever is going on, you know, with the stick infractions. I know that there was like a week or two where it just seemed like every game there's a high sticking penalty, which thankfully that didn't happen tonight. The two penalties that you mentioned, as far as like too many men on the ice, I thought was bogus. They had the puck in the defensive zone and they were on a line change. Okay. The puck was not even near the bench, and yet the ref decided to call a too many men, you know, penalty, which to me, I can understand if the puck is in the area and you have 6 or 7 guys on the ice that, you know, that's too many, but to say that they were back in the defensive zone with one defenseman with the puck and then they call it for a line change, to me, that's asinine. And then the Bennett one for interference, he was pushed into the guy. And I could hear him from the ice saying it wasn't me, it was the guy behind me that pushed me. So trying to explain his case to the referee, but unfortunately, number 38 on the referee roster is not a big fan of the Florida Panthers tonight. So hopefully we can get a name, and next time he's roughing for us, I can get more fans to say, "Hey, ref, the SUCK word." You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, scouting the refs can provide those numbers for you if you look up number 38. And of course, going to the box, we mentioned going to the box too much, and of course, there was one penalty that was self-inflicted by a stretch pass out of the Panthers zone that caused the 4-on-2 for the Chicago Blackhawks that got Brandon Montour going to the box on a slash, but it prevented a scoring opportunity for the Panthers as well. And even on their first power play opportunity, that the Panthers were just struggling. I mean, struggling with zone entries on that one. And you heard it from the crowd. I mean, talk about how restless the crowd was on that first power play, especially.
Oh, I mean, I think it's been a season like culminating in how the power play's been. I mean, it's been good since the beginning of the year, I guess. Like it's been better. But to see that this team is still in the hunt for a playoff spot, you would see that there's more urgency, or you would expect some. And the fact that they couldn't get in the zone, they couldn't connect on passes, and that it was just easy for Chicago to have zone exits. It was not. It just wasn't going their way tonight. And the crowd gave it to them during the power plays. It gave it to them during sloppy plays, and gave it to them at the end of the second period. To be honest with you, myself included, were not happy with the results that were going on. I mean, you have a team like Florida that's going in for a playoff spot, and then you have a team that's going for the first overall pick. Come on, guys, like let's go.
Yeah, you said it best, definitely, with how restless that crowd was tonight for the Florida Panthers. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to talk about the third period that was for the Panthers. We're going to talk about how they were able to come back. Matthew Tkachuk, his heroics in the third period, getting the 3 primary assists in that period, and if we feel good about the win. We're going to discuss that next year on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about FanDuel Sportsbook. And we're at the midway point through the NBA season. It's here, and now's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because the new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and easy to use. Then you can bet on anything from the money line to point scores to threes drain. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back on this Saturday, March 11th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, where the Florida Panthers are coming off a 4-3 overtime win over the Chicago Blackhawks at home. Avoid being swept by the Chicago Blackhawks. And Nick, the Panthers got their second win of the season when trailing after the second period. There were 122-1 coming into tonight's game. Their goal differential in the third period was -17 going into tonight. That includes both home and road. And the Panthers outscore the Hawks 3-1. Of course, missed their opportunity with a regulation win to tie the New York Islanders in regulation wins with 29. The Panthers now have 28. The Islanders have 29, and that's the biggest tiebreaker as far as points. They missed their opportunity there with the Chicago Blackhawks scoring with about 45 seconds left in the third period. But let's talk about what happened prior to the Chicago Blackhawks tying the game at 3. Matthew Tkachuk with just heroics there. I mean, the Etu Luostarinen was aggressive on the forecheck, and then just a no-look pass from Matthew Tkachuk to a cutting Sam Bennett on the doorstep to get it to 1. And then just 29 seconds later, of course, there's a penalty in between with an interference call behind the net on Kurashev on Sam Reinhart. Tkachuk's shot deflects off of Sam Reinhart from the slot in, and then a face-off win for the Panthers. And the fact, and let's talk about that third goal, especially the quick passing. The puck wasn't on their sticks for not even. It feels like not even half a second, and the Chicago Blackhawks after the faceoff, which the Panthers struggled on the dot on the night. I believe they lost faceoffs 56% to 43 on the night.
Mm-hmm.
And the one rare win that they had, the quick passing to get Etulis and right to the slot, Chicago not being set up, and then that to take the lead for the Panthers. Just incredible game by Matthew Tkachuk. Now sets a record for most points for a Florida Panther in their first season with the team. Just how incredible has Matthew Tkachuk been, and just talk about how you were feeling about that third period.
Well, about Matthew Tkachuk, it's been a long time coming for me just because he's been missing for the last couple of games. To be honest, he hasn't showed up on the score sheet. He hasn't really been making a huge impact, but the team needed him tonight, and he definitely showed it in the third period by possessing the puck, making smart plays, and just getting the puck on the sticks of the players that needed to have the puck. I mean, you talk about that board battle between, him and Luosterainen that they won, and then they just put out in front with Sam Bennett. Panthers couldn't do that all game. Like, that was the first time they were able to actually get down into that area and actually get, something going. And first time they're able to do that, boom, it's a goal. And then, as you said, 29 seconds later, they get the power play and he shoots it. I don't know if he was going for Reinhart's stick, but it worked. I mean, Reinhart could, I honestly think Reinhart could be a baseball player with the way that he bats the puck out of the air most of the time. But that was a huge goal. That right there was a huge momentum shift, just because how many times have we seen it where the Panthers get like a goal and then there's like false hope behind it?
Yes. This season especially.
Exactly. Like, they'll score and then Chicago will come down right away and make it 3-1. It's like, oh, okay, well, there goes that. But the fact that they were to get that one so quick was electric. The stadium really went off. I mean, I took my dad's little hat off or whatever and was swinging around the crowd and everything in the section that I was in. And then the third goal, couldn't ask for a better shot from Luosterainen, and I can't be happier for a player this season to really start coming out of his shell and really showing, the potential that he always had. And, some people on Twitter will always say, like, hey, we won the Tkachuk trade because E2's turning out the way that, we always wanted him to. So, but back to Matthew Tkachuk, if it wasn't for him tonight, Florida might have been shut out, or it would have been a depressing loss.
Yeah, and there's one thing that stuck out. I'm not sure if you saw the frustration off Matthew Tkachuk's face, but Bally Sports showed a replay on the power play right before right before the Bennett goal, where the Panthers were starting to attack more. They didn't get anything on the power play on that one. Ekblad shoots it from the point. Matthew Tkachuk tries deflecting it past Mrazek, but misses the net on the deflection.
Yep.
And then you see him swinging his stick after in frustration. And it's just goes to show how much he cares, how much he's just all effort out there too, as well. And then just it's crazy. Soon after, that's when they get the first goal to start that comeback as well. And Sergei Bobrovsky wasn't busy really much tonight, which gives me a little bit of optimism that he's going to start on this back-to-back against the Winnipeg Jets. I think that there's good signs that he's going to.
Maurice already said he was.
Oh, I have not seen the tweet, so thank you.
You're welcome.
but crazy to think as well. Also in that overtime, how the Panthers started off with no defensemen. They went all the forwards in the first few shifts, and then the big save of the night, Sergei Bobrovsky on Dickinson in overtime. And also, let's talk about that. Let's talk about Brandon Montour before the goal. Andreas Athanasiou was about to have a grade A opportunity on Sergei Bobrovsky, and then you see Montour just skating over to take away any shooting lane, and then Athanasiou just takes away the net, takes away any shot opportunity for Athanasiou, and then Barkov, many white jerseys up near the blue line, and then Barkov just chips it over to Montour, and then My goodness, the no look backhand pass 5-hole to beat Mrazek, Montour, and that was Montour's career high in goals in
12th, yeah.
his 12th goal, which is a career high. Just amazing how with this Panthers team we haven't seen many comebacks, but this was a game that could have ended very poorly. We were about to come on here tonight and just talk about how the season was over.
Like last week.
now we're talking survival for this team.
Yeah, and it's funny to bring that up about Montour because we spoke about earlier this episode that he pinched on that first goal, which caused a 2-on-1. So, you giveth away, but you also taketh at the same time. So, I didn't really think he scored that, to be honest with you. Like, that was ridiculous. The fact that he was able to go backhand, no look under Mrazek. The only thing that could tell me is that Mrazek wasn't actually expecting that shot.
Oh, no way.
At all. And you could just see the expression on his face after it went in, after he noticed it went in, and he just he wanted to lay flat on the ice. But the team played the way that they should have probably 10 minutes into the second, 15 minutes into the second, and then from there they played the way that they should have. They're lucky to get out 2 points.
Oh, yeah.
The final goal, not Bobrovsky's fault. It was a broken play.
Mm-hmm.
He saved the initial shot that went off of Mark Stahl, and it just went under him and then came back out a little bit. So he actually saved the deflection off first. And then who was it? Was it Gooden? I think it was.
It was Cole Gutman.
Okay. Gutman, who just backhanded. He had an open net and everything. Bob was already out of the play and everything.
Camping.
But yeah, I mean, the only person that I would probably blame on there not doing their job was my boy Lundell, taking away his stick and probably taking the body. But at the same time, it was a broken play. I think it went through 3 Panthers or hit 3 Panthers before it went in the back of the net. So, again, I think Bob played very well. He stopped the puck. He didn't have a lot of rebounds, and he controlled the play, which is very encouraging considering the workload he's had. And, again, as I just said, I'm very happy to hear that he's going to get the start tomorrow against Winnipeg because you got to roll him. He's feeling it right now.
No doubt. And Sergei Bobrovsky with the win tonight, he passes Thomas Vilkuhn for third all time for wins in Florida Panthers history, and he's 5 wins away from passing John Van Beesbrook for second all time. He's still ways away from Roberto Luongo, but just in just over 3 years of what Bobrovsky's done. And of course, goalie wins aren't necessarily a 100% indication of play, and it helps that the Panthers can score, but still, what Sergei Bobrovsky has been able to do, especially since mid-December, has just been outstanding, and he deserves all of his roses for sure on how he's played tonight. But in segment number 3, we are going to discuss and ask a question: Is this a win to feel good about? And we are going to talk about the upcoming game for the Florida Panthers against the Winnipeg Jets on Saturday night on today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Third and final segment on this Saturday, March 11th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast with a Friday night recording. It's still a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. Nick Fairbanks is here after experiencing a 4-3 overtime win for the Florida Panthers live at FLA Live Arena. And Nick, gotta ask the question because comebacks are exciting. And we know the circumstances that the Florida Panthers are in now, just 2 points out of the final wild card spot, which the Pittsburgh Penguins will be playing a nationally televised game tomorrow against the Flyers. The Islanders will be facing off against the Capitals at home tomorrow. But for the Panthers, is this a game you feel good about winning?
So, if you would have asked me probably about 30 minutes into the game, hell no. This was a terrible, terrible game. But considering the fact that they have not had too many comebacks this year and that they've found ways to lose games, unfortunately, and and I don't mean to say this about teams that, are obviously in the lottery and everything, but they have a tendency to play down to teams. I mean, they had to come back against Anaheim last week.
Yep.
And now they have to come back against Chicago. I mean, you think of all the games that they had this season that they should have won, like against your Columbuses, your Phillies. We talk about this, I feel like, every Friday. Had they gotten a point or, won those games, they wouldn't be in the position they are. So for me personally, since I'm from Chicago and I detest the Blackhawks, yes, this is a game to feel good about, a win to feel good about.
Yeah, and I consider also the fact that the Panthers were able to weather their storms on the PK, going 6 for 6 on the night. Of course, their PK is third worst in the league. And yeah, you don't want to go to the box a lot of times, but weathering the storms as far as that part of the game, and the fact that the Chicago Blackhawks weren't dominating the possession on the other side, and it was just and the issues that the Panthers had with giving up those goals they're fixable. I believe they are. So I think this is a win that you can build off of, but it doesn't mean that there can't be alarms neither. As far as that, I mean, we've seen the alarms all season. I mean, they're the first team. They're technically the first team out as far as points wise. I know the Sens right now own a better points percentage by 200th of a point. Buffalo has fallen out a little bit after allowing Dallas 10 goals the other night.
That was a fantastic game to watch, by the way.
Yeah, Marchman scored, by the way.
Yes, he did.
Game. But with the Panthers, I mean, the alarms, it's like it's still there for this team, but it's still when you go back to the penalty kill, something to be somewhat satisfied, but not completely.
Definitely, and they got to figure it out. They got to understand that they were the President Trophy winners last year, and now that they're the most penalized team, or called penalized team in the NHL, and you got to think about what you're doing and what are you doing to put yourself in a position to take a penalty. Is it that you're not skating, you're not trying hard enough? Are you not being knowledgeable, with your stick? I mean, is it too high? You're hitting a guy in the face. I just think that they need to really calm themselves and really just play their game because, again, we've said it multiple times, 5-on-5, they're a fantastic team. They're plus 22. When they get in trouble is when it comes to special teams. They're either not going to score on the power play or they're going to get scored on the PK. So, I mean, luckily they're playing Chicago tonight. They didn't really have, their power players. I mean, they don't have Kane anymore. Taves is probably on the shelf for the rest of the season and hope he gets better, health-wise. But other than that, I mean, let's clean it up, boys. You're not going to be able to have these chances during the playoffs if you make it. And even last year against the Capitals, it was horrific. I mean, they couldn't score on the power play, and yet every time Washington had a power play, it seemed like TJ Oshie, not Yoshi, was there in the slot tipping pucks. And it made the series go longer than what was expected. But at the same time, they have to be better. They have to be more disciplined.
No doubt. And going 6 times is not something you want to see. That's for sure for this team. But let's turn our attention to Saturday night's game against the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets are kind of on the downward trajectory, but Money Puck still has them at a 71% chance of making the postseason, while Calgary has gotten a few wins here and there. Right now, Calgary is actually losing to the Anaheim Ducks 2-1 at home. So yeah, but theirs is at 49%. So the Winnipeg Jets are going to come in desperate. They're on the front end of a back-to-back too. So there might be a chance that the Winnipeg Jets start David Rittich against the Florida Panthers, and they play Connor Hellebuck against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Usually teams like to play the worst goalie against the Panthers historically, but I mean, there was a stat about most goals by defensemen. The Panthers and the Jets are in the top 3 there. Of course, Josh Morrissey is having a great season for the Winnipeg Jets as well. A Vezina candidate, even though it's going to be Linus Ullmark's award more than likely this year. But and of course, there's the motivation of facing off against their former coach in Paul Maurice after everything that happened there, after everything that went down. Of course, Mark Scheifele, Pierre-Luc Dubois are players you cannot sleep on, of course. Nope. But they're hungry for some wins. They're not playing well as of late. 2-6-2. How are you seeing Saturday night's game?
Well, the Jets play a big boy game. They have a lot of big bodies. If you don't play physical or match their tone, you're going to get run over. I'm trying to figure out when Florida played them back in December on the 6th, and they got scrubbed 5-2. And I think game was
they were injury riddled too. That one. That was the last game of their Canadian road trip. They had no Gudas in that one. I remember.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So they were no Lundell neither.
No Lundell, and I'm not putting it all on him, but Spencer Knight was in net, and this game was done after the second period. It looks like Winnipeg was up 4-1, but hopefully, I'm not expecting it. As you said, we're catching on to these kind of things, but hopefully Anthony Duclair will be healthy enough to play tomorrow, because he does add another dynamic, and he's definitely proven me wrong, because I wasn't sure how he was going to fit into the Paul Maurice scheme of things, just because he likes to play more of a defensive game, dump and chase, where Duke really thrives on the rush, or at least getting the puck and having the puck on a stick. So if he's ready to go, that could add something that, maybe, the Jets, it might pull the Jets out of position, but at the same time, Florida's got to bring their lunch pail tomorrow. If they play like they did for the first 30 minutes, against Chicago, against the Jets, we're going to have a repeat of what happened in December.
Yeah, and Barkov also didn't play that game neither against the Winnipeg Jets. So just a game that was a game that was, when you look back at it, it was a really hard game to judge by when it came to the Panthers against the Winnipeg Jets at that time. But a chance for Paul Maurice to get a little bit of a victory lap, even though I think Paul Maurice is a little bit more concerned about just winning and getting a playoff spot, and just trying to get one step closer. And the Panthers, they're gonna have 4 days off after Saturday. Lots of rest. You welcome in the Canadians after that, and of course the Devils will be back. And I don't know if I want to look too far, but we remember about the whole Nico Hischier and Sasha Barkov face-off that injured Barkov, and then in the second matchup within a week, Matthew Tkachuk goes after Nico Hischier after the game was well in hand. So a big week for the Panthers, definitely coming up for them, and a good opportunity in Game 5 of 7 of the 7-game homestand. Only dropped one so far in a game where it was still very winnable against Nashville just over a week ago. And the Panthers, home cooking. This is a place that they're very comfortable in playing. So very, very encouraging, despite a little bit of a scare in this one, to get a win. And time to build off it, Nick. Time to just build off it.
So I wanted to ask you a question based off of their schedule coming up. We obviously play Winnipeg tomorrow, and then they don't play until next Thursday against Montreal, then New Jersey, and then Detroit and Philly. In your opinion, what would be a respectable record after those 5 games?
After those 5 games, you mean 4? Do you mean the rest? Wait, oh, okay. You mean you're including Detroit and Philly there, right?
Yes.
4-1-0.
So would you be okay with losing to Winnipeg and losing the next 4, and then winning the next 4?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh,
Because I think that is possible. I think Winnipeg is going to be the toughest one, whereas Montreal, I mean, they already know they're kind of out of it. They want us to lose so that they get a better draft pick. Let's not.
and Florida's owned Montreal this year.
Yeah, and let's not remind ourselves of Ben Sherrod because he's been terrible, even for Detroit. I think we have New Jersey's number. They're obviously the Panthers of this year, but I think that, we have a recipe to beat them. Detroit sold everybody but Larkin, and Stevie Y, I think, actually pulled off quite a heist. But I think, considering what they have going on, I think they can beat Detroit. And Philly, as we talked about earlier in the season, that's another game that Florida should have won, but you don't know.
And they just fired Chuck Fletcher today. Former Panthers assistant GM Chuck Fletcher was assistant GM for the Panthers for 9 years. So yeah, he's after a pretty disastrous trade deadline. There was the rumors of, is JVR getting traded? Is he not? And then ended up not happening. So disastrous trade deadline for the Pennsylvania teams. Ron Hextall also didn't have a good trade deadline for the Penguins as well. So yeah, just tough time to be a Pennsylvania hockey fan, that's for sure. But Nick, I want to thank you so much once again for joining me on another edition of Fairbanks Friday here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you, and glad that you were able to experience a win in person at FLA Live Arena. Tell everybody where they can find you online.
Armando, thanks for having me on again every Friday. And, it was always good to see Florida win, but especially against Chicago Blackhawks, there's a little bit of a, chocolate swirl and cherry on top for me for that. So, but for those of you who are listening, please give me a follow at Prudential0. I'll be back next Friday, hopefully. And, we'll be talking about hopefully a win against the Montreal Habitants.
Yeah. And, congratulations to your Bears on getting a few draft capital for their number 1 overall pick too. So congratulations.
Thank you. I'll give them the credit for that. Maybe I'll talk offline about how I really feel about that trade.
for sure, since we're out of time. But thank you so much, Nick, and I will see you next week.
Thank you.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure you listen to today's edition of Game to Game NHL. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NHL with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NHL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. So I'm Armando Velez with Nick Fairbanks, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.